meeting, then you can see when everybody took a seat. Here we have to watch the numbers growing. I will start with the title. And I think everybody's in now. Welcome to our webinar on how the G in ESG is gaining momentum. And we want to present you today a mixture of data and use cases. And together with me is Claudius. Maybe you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ariane. Also a very warm welcome from my side. I'm here for the Q&A session. One comment for the audience: if you would like to ask a question, please use the Q&A or FAQ function in the menu bar down below in the Zoom menu bar. Yeah, we're gonna answer all your questions afterwards or during the webinar. I will now turn off my camera and come back as soon as the first questions come in. Okay.
You know, as I have a background in market research, we always say there are no dumb questions. So please make use of the question function. You can also comment. That helps us to design our webinars better to your needs, but you have to share your interests and comments with us for doing so. Before I start, I would like to tell you a little bit about the Global ESG Monitor in case you don't know us yet. What do? We have the mission to analyze corporate sustainability reporting, and we do this since a couple of years now, having analyzed 1,300 reports so far from over 500 companies, from over 70 industries, not over, that's 70 industries and 4 continents. And our aim is to help companies to improve their sustainability reporting. That's why we think it's so important that you use the Q&A and that you give us feedback. Also, our research is like an open research. So we want to learn from you what is important for you in order to adjust to your needs. What did we do this year? This year we have selected a smaller sample of 194 companies. This sample includes companies from DAX, MDAX, SDAX, and our GEM selected. One company is missing in SDAX because they were not able to publish their report on time to do a cybercrime case. So this is only 69 for the SDAX, and GEM selected is a combination of privately held companies, but also companies in other indices from all over Europe, and one US company who asked us to evaluate their report and which is in our sample now. How did we do it? We have translated different frameworks into our questionnaire because quality in reporting is defined by many stakeholders out there, stakeholders who do this for quite some time now as the Global Reporting Initiative, or who are specialized on a certain topic like the Task Force on Climate-related disclosures, and the newest thing, the EFRAG and IFRS with their requirements on reporting. And we also have our own stakeholder dialogue, which we use to make sure that what we publish and what we evaluate is useful to the companies. The object of our definition is as clear as our job objective, and that's the annual and separate report of the companies. We do not evaluate any websites or press releases or anything else. We have chosen those 2 formats because those are the ones companies can be held reliable for, and they are connected to a clear publication date, which is important for us because our data is supposed to be very on time and not outdated. And we do it by a 3-way research process, because what we are analyzing is written words and numbers, and this is very complex, as well as the language and the way companies prepare their sustainability information. And in order to have high reliant quality data, we have one analyst who runs through the analyst first, and then we have a second one doing the same thing. We match the data, and in case there are differences, that's the only point where we use AI. It's automated displayed, and then an audit team comes in and checks those differences and tries to resolve them using a dialogue approach in best case. Our analyst team is diverse, comes from different parts of the world. With this diversity, we try to decrease the writer bias. And also here are some more information on our methodology. I would like to invite you, if you want to learn more on how we do it, to download our methodology section on the Global ESG Monitor website under methodology. Coming to the topic of today's webinar, how the G in ESG is gaining momentum. And I would like to take the chance to first set up some kind of framework, because the topic is complex, as you will see, as everything with sustainability is very complex. And for me, it's really helpful if I'm trying to understand such a topic, to understand the framework as first thing, as a starting point. And I would like to share my thoughts with you on this, and also explain you why we think that the G is gaining momentum. So on the left side, you see different three-letter versions. It starts with CSR, then comes ESG, and then DMA. And CSR, meaning corporate social responsibility, is the starting point. It has the longest tradition in reporting. It's over 100 years old, and it started as early as in the 19th century with industrialization, where entrepreneurs were committed to their employees and took on tasks for their immediate social environment, for example, through housing construction measures or the establishment of schools or other cultural institutions to give them some kind of good environment to live in. In the 1970s, this concept of social responsibility was widened with environmental protection. And since the 1990s, it has been anchored in the state level as a response to global challenges, because the implementation of the CSR concept seemed to be a good answer to all the challenges out there. ESG then was the next big thing, and it was a response of the capital market, which was supposed to be included within the Green Deal and inspired to include sustainability in their investment decisions, but they didn't really pick on this immediately. And therefore, there was a discussion because there were many indicators, and it was agreed on the need to reduce the topic of sustainability to a few manageable indicators coming from three areas, which were environment, social, and governance. And this was the time latest when governance came into the game. If you look at legislation, you see it's a little bit before that, because the German Corporate Governance Codex is already in place in 2001, as I believe. So, but you see from concept terms, that's the reasons when governance came into place. And now with the double materiality approach, we go back to the old definition of sustainability, saying it's the triple bottom line approach, combining people, planet, and prosperity or profit on an equal footing. And governance in this context is like an enabler for companies to ensure that commitment, transparency, and good decisions, as well as business success, are not in conflict with social, environmental, or economic interests. That as much as a background for the topic we are talking about today. And what you see now is the frequency of which governance was chosen as a material topic by the 194 companies we have evaluated. And you can clearly see the ESG tradition, which I have described earlier. So E for climate, 100% of the companies said that's material. G for governance, 100% said it's material. An own workforce, where only one company did not choose it as a material topic for whatever reasons we have not found out. what was a problem with this G topic being material is that the definition I will show you with governance in the next few minutes is much more broader and more detailed than the companies displaying governance being material in their reports. So it can be the case that our companies are measured in areas which are not material for them, but which they did not exclude or include because they only talk very abstract about this matter. Let's take a look on the ESRS, we called it the documented integrity, and a little bit more background. So this standard is about presenting the governance structures in such a transparent way that stakeholders gain a deep understanding of the company's action and the associated governance practices. So you can see with all the principles coming from ESRS and talking about their overarching goal, it's always the stakeholder who is supposed to be in a position to understand the company's structures, processes, and decisions better by their reporting. When we look at G1, we have 3 focus areas. One is business ethics and corporate culture. This also includes anti-corruption and anti-bribery, whistleblower protection, and even animal welfare being one of the new topics. Then the management of relations with suppliers, particularly in regard with payment practices, also for SMEs. And then the third area, which is political influence and lobbying activities of the company. And there, one important thing is that the G1 standard is a so-called topic-related standard. I already mentioned it. It's matter of the sustainability of the double materiality analysis, and only if it's material, then it has to be reported in detail. When you look on the left side, we show you the number of other standards, frameworks, and EU legal acts which are preceding this G1 standard. And I will point that out while we go through this, where you can see those interdependencies between those preceding standards. When we talk about governance reporting, then this is more than G1. So governance in ESRS is not only to be found in this topical standard, which is due to materiality, but also in ESRS 1 and 2, as well as in some other topical standards, as well as in E1, which is the climate standard, or S4, which is consumers and end users. I will go in this more deeply later on. A note which we would like to point out here is that disclosures from ESRS 1 and 2 on governance, the so-called GOV aspects in these standards, they are combined with business model and strategy, and they are excluded from being dependent on the materiality assessment. So everybody who falls under ESRS has to report at least to some extent on governance, which comes from ESRS 1 and 2. To make you understand those requirements a little bit more deeply, we have broken it further down. First for ESRS 1, which we have shown here. In ESRS 1, governance disclosures are linked to due diligence, and it states that due diligence is an ongoing process which helps the companies to identify, prevent, mitigate, remediate, and account for the actual and potential negative impacts on the environment and people, and how they are associated with their business activities, and how they integrate this into their companies using governance structures and governance processes. You will find this topic of due diligence again when we look at ESRS 2. So here you have 5 GOV aspects which are important and which have to be read together with the so-called SBM and IRO. SBM is strategy and business model, and IRO is impacts, risks, and opportunities. impacts for the impact perspective of double materiality, and risks and opportunities for the financial materiality side. So you see that's all connected to each other and shows you that governance is really brought into the ESRS. What those 1 to 5 disclosures combine is the role of administrative management and supervisory bodies. It's the information provided to sustainability matters by the undertakings, administrative management and supervisory board. It's sustainability-related performance in incentive schemes. It's a sustainability due diligence process. As I said, that's coming from ESRS 1 in here, and then governance connected to risk management. The next then is business conduct. I already talked about the focus areas. Here I want to point out topic, subtopic, and sub-subtopics, which are connected here. So topic is corporate policy or corporate behavior, corporate ethics, corporate conduct. And then the subtopics are corporate culture, protection of whistleblowers, animal welfare, political commitment, and management of relationships with suppliers, including payment practices. And then the next topic is corruption and bribery, and this is broken down in subtopics, which include prevention and detecting of corruption and bribery, including training and the concrete incidents which have to be reported. Governance is also to be found in other topical standards. One is E1, which is the incorporation of sustainability-related performance into incentive schemes with regard to climate-related aspects. And as for the consumers and end users standard, which connects governance to data protection. Those are reasons why it's sometimes really hard at the moment to decide when governance is mentioned by the companies as being material, where to group it, because it has this interconnections to other standards in ESRS. And since we have included them in our research, we had to do for the ESRS compliance check, for the ESRS compliance check, where we group it. There are other areas where governance comes into place. I will talk about this later on too, which is the whole policy section in total.
Ariane, we just received the first question on that. In comparison to the S and E standards, why is there only one G standard? Does that mean that the governance is less important, or is it because of the cross-cutting standards, or could you elaborate on that?
That's a question which I'm asked pretty often. And if you look at the history of the G1 standard involving, you could see that in the beginning there were more standards in the discussion, but then it was decided that this should not be a topical standard only, but this should also be a big part of the overarching or cross-cutting standards, and then has to be found in every policy for each material topic. So from my point of view, there is no topical standard without governance aspects to it. And I think this shows that it might not be the number of governance standards in ESRS, but the way governance is distributed throughout ESRS that shows how important this topic is. And as I said in the beginning, governance is really an enabler, and therefore it has to be part of every aspect of every topical standard. What I'm showing now is the performance of our sample in the area of governance. And as I said, it was really hard for us to group the companies in there. So it could be the case that we have measured them in areas which are not material for them. We have therefore excluded to take out, for example, animal welfare from our scoring. You will find this topic in the gap tables. if you take a look in your gap tables, we have decided not to score because it's really hard to decide on if animal welfare is important for a company or not. You have to dive really deep into that. And this was not possible within the framework of our research. But to show you that the best in class was able to reach 91% here, the last in class 13%, that shows you that also we might have measured aspects which are not material for everyone. There is a big gap since governance is something which goes beyond business conduct here. Let's go deeper into the results, and I hope you like the combination of data and best practices for which I have chosen for this part of my presentation. And we will start with something really basic, which is corporate culture. And a key aspect to corporate culture are the so-called values. And if we look at what corporate culture means, we can see that there are two parts to it. So we have the so-called unwritten laws on one side, which are reflected, for example, in the attitudes, in the behavior or the action of management and employees. They have a highly symbolic character. And then the other part is the internal mission statements, the policies, the guidelines, or the code of conduct. This is the main focus of ESRS. GRI also includes this value perspective, and what you see here on the right side comes from GRI 102, and they ask companies to provide information about their values, ideas, and purposes. And you can see, since this is a really old requirement, it's pretty good established in the reporting. 92% of the companies say something about it. The GRI goes further and asks on how those values were developed, how they are approved, or how they are promoted via training. And you can see that the numbers go high here too, especially in how they were developed and how they are promoted via training. So what we mark black here shows you when we have more than every second company reporting on that, which is more than 50%. As I said, it's more about values. When we talk about corporate culture, it's also about the policy section. And before I explain those results here, I would like to point out that you should also take a look at MDRP, the minimal disclosure requirements for policies. So for every material topic, you have to explain your guidelines, your policies on this, and in order to report accordingly, you have to look at the requirements for this. That shows you another aspect of governance in ESRS. What we see here is how corporate culture reporting is in general, and you see that there is a comprehensive description provided in 91% of all of the cases we have analyzed, whereas only 52% of the companies we would consider as being comprehensively reporting about this. We have some aspects which are more frequently in the reports. That's, for example, corporate culture topics. 77% report on this, or how they are promoted among the employees. 80% give details about this. And also 60% who report on how leadership supports corporate culture. Incentives and tools for corporate culture are less frequently in reporting. Only 22% report on this. And in only 9% of the cases, we have no information at all. So we can come to the conclusion that corporate culture reporting is well established, as you can see here on the left side. We also looked at the percentage of companies providing a clear description of ethics and business conduct training for their employees. This is also well anchored in reporting. 89% report on this. And also in details, it's pretty good. So 86 refer to a business conduct training policy, and 56 give detailed information on these trainings, which is quite high numbers. You see those are marked in black. So it's true for more than every second company in this case. And this brings me to our first use case, which is Porsche. We chose this use case because it contains information of how corporate culture has been operationalized by the company. Porsche has chosen an integrity approach here and combines this integrity approach with a clear communicated due diligence approach. It also combines it with clear goals, measures, and a monitoring approach via survey and polls, as well as a communication on the results. For example, the integrity score, which we thought is kind of nice since we have also the Integrity Star Award. And incidentally, our score differs marginally from the one of the integrity score of Porsche. Also, I'm sure we measured totally different things here. The next aspect I want to dive deeper in is the percentage of companies committing to prompt, independent, and objective investigations of business conduct incidents. That could be in case of corruption or bribery. And you see also this is very well anchored in the reports, 90% report on this, but only 56 give information on a dedicated internal team. 13% talk about independent external experts and 22 talk about a mixed approach. In 25% of the cases, this was only disclosed with limited details. We could not really decide on how this is done, and only 10% do not say anything about it. The next I want to show possess or can leverage sustainability-related expertise. If you remember, governance should be connected to strategy and business model. It should be part of the due diligence process. And since this means that sustainability is brought into the company on a very broad level, we need to have expertise for those who decide or monitor this to clearly make good decisions. So far, 69% report that they have expertise or can access sustainability expertise. However, that also means that just one third, 31% of the company lack detailed information on this expertise. So we do not know if the boards have this. What we recommend is that if you are required under Section 161 of the Aktiengesetz to disclose a declaration on corporate governance or even report following the German Code of Governance recommendation, then you can use a matrix and display this expertise in such a matrix. And we looked for an example to display how this could look like. And we chose an example from Fresenius Medical Care. You can see that both qualitative information is displayed on the upper left, and then this matrix in the bigger screenshot coming from page 142 and 143. And it combines narrative list of rules, duties, and competencies of the supervisory board together with a tabular overview of expertise of each board member. And this is a quite nice approach of following ESRS and structuring the information very well. Next topic is anti-corruption and bribery. And on the left side, you see the average score for this section, which is 43 points out of 100. So we are in the second quartile for this. Best in class reaches 87, last in class 0 points. And on the right side, we have displayed two details for this section. The first one is the percentage of company disclosing high-risk area or functions of corruption and bribery in their companies. This is important because the risk is not distributed equally within the companies. So in order to help stakeholders to understand of how you have identified those risks, for incidents, you have to show which areas of functions in the company are affected. Today, only 16% of the companies disclose such information. And the next thing you have to show is on how to deal with those risks, and that could be through anti-corruption training. And here the frequency is much higher. Training topics are covered in 53% of the cases, as well as training extent. If the training is voluntary or obligatory, this is only detailed in 39% of the cases. 26% do not give any information on this. The second thing when it comes to corruption and bribery is to talk about incidents. So if you have no incidents, we have to say that, as well as if incidents have occurred. Only 51% of the companies do this so far. And when it comes to the details on how to react to the companies, that's what to the incidents, that's what you see on the right side. You see quite smaller numbers, with 23% conducted initial assessment of the case, 28% undertook internal investigation, 15% talk about how they reviewed those incidents by a risk or ethics committee. 11% talk about how it was reviewed by the board of directors, and 13% say that it was subject to external audit or review. Only 1% give no information on measures needed to address this topic on incidents of corruption. Again, one more use case on this topic, which is Deutsche Telekom and Siemens. The upper case is Deutsche Telekom, and this report provides a narrative overview of several of the company's initiatives, such as audits they have in place to uncover areas with an increased risk of corruption and misconduct. You remember I said it's really important to point those out. Telekom talks about procurement, sales, and donations. And then they show how they have anti-corruption training for their employees and how this topic is integrated in to the code of conduct, also in code of conduct for suppliers. And it also gives a numerical overview of the topic via a number of compliance-relevant cases of misconduct or corruption and a number of confirmed cases. The second use case on the bottom of the slide is Siemens AG. That's a more brief way to put this. They give a tabular overview listing the number of cases reported and the number and type of sanctions. So this is more brief than the example from Telekom. We wanted to give you those two ways on how companies do this at the moment to show what is possible in this area. Next big thing, if we do not have any questions, Claudius. Again, my invitation, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them on the way. If not, we do it in the end. Since there are no...
Yes, I mean, I have two more questions regarding complexity of the reporting.
Yeah.
We can do it at the end or right now, as you wish. One question was, what about companies that were not required to report about governance? For example, private companies. Do you have a recommendation on how they can approach this complex topic?
Those new companies being required now to report on governance, they are one of the reasons why we call this webinar How G is Gaining Momentum. And I think one important aspect for these companies being new for in this topic is to understand that they are required under ESRS 1 and 2 to include certain aspects, no matter if it's material or not, and that everything which is in G1 is aspect to materiality. And I hope that these companies understand materiality and the double materiality assessment as an important strategic tool to decrease complexity on the topic.
Mm-hmm. And follow-up question, Ariane, are sanctions taken against missing or incorrect information? And if so, by who?
Why do you think it's funny that companies have to fear sanctions? Sanction is a really difficult topic because that the regulator has sanction would require that it goes into national law. ESRS is still in the process of coming into place and will take some time until all the different countries of the EU have integrated it. But the stakeholder groups, they are the ones who make the companies responsible. And this might not be a regulatory risk, but as you can understand when you dive into CSRD and them talking about those two groups, one stakeholders being users of sustainability information and the ones who finance the Green Deal, who are supposed to control the companies, and the second group being the ones who make sure that companies stick to their Verantwortung, responsibility, to their responsibility, which could be NGOs or competitors. It is a broad field. Insurance companies can adjust their D&O practices. There's a lot which is evolving right now. And I think the lens of looking only from regulatory or litigation risks is too shortly here. It will be broader. Transparency brings more stakeholders on the table and gives more options for controlling the companies. And I'm a big fan of green light thinking, not only to have fear of this, but to understand the chances this brings too. And yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. That's it from my side for the time being.
All right, then I will continue with lobbying. And this area in G1 is really much prompted by OECD principles for transparency and integrity. Here you can also find a definition for lobbying. And for ESRS, they call to disclose key political positions as well as corresponding registration obligations, starting with the question of how interests are articulated vis-a-vis the public sector and what procedures are observed for interventions. Example given would be a compliance with the code of conduct in the political environment. Let's look at the numbers. Left side again, how this was done overall with all the aspects we have evaluated for lobbying. And you see the average score is only 15. So it's currently neither widespread or much detailed. What you see on the right side, only 1 in 5 companies publish its lobbying activities policy, and only 12% state a supervisory responsibility for lobbying. Around 1 in 6 companies state that they are not involved in political influence or lobbying activities. The last case makes it easy for us because then we understand this is not a material topic. Again, for those who say abstractly that governance is important, we don't know if lobbying is important, and if they say nothing about it, we have no clue if this is only a left out or if this was not something which is important for them. Something which is really interesting we have displayed here, it's the memberships in association, which is also one form of influence that could be reported according to ESRS. And so far, only 29% of the companies disclose this information. This comes from GRI 228. They also require the disclosure of memberships in association and interest groups. So you can see here both standards are overlapping. And we brought you some use case here to understand better what GRI is asking for. And you can see here use case Deutsche Bank. They clearly define to the refer to the GRI standards in their reporting, especially GRI 2 and 28. And they disclose not only their global membership in trade associations, that's the tabular overview, but also their participation in working groups together with the topic. That's the text underneath, key topics in 2023. And on the left side, they have a declaration on party donations, which is no donation to political parties. And then they give insights into their entries in the EU Transparency Register and the German Lobby Register. You see that's a very detailed approach to the topic of lobbying, giving information in a more descriptive format, and then also in a tabular format. This example also shows you that reporting is the variety of information using visual elements, tabular elements, and descriptive elements. And if you dive deeper into ESRS, you see that ESRS requires you to use a broader variety of this kind of information, trying to make sure that information are more comparable in the future than they are right now. Next case, not part of ESRS, but of GRI, is the anti-competitive behavior, or to put it positive, fair competition. And here the overall score is 40% of all possible points. Best in class reaches 100% of all points. Last in class, 0 points. We brought 2 details. That's the percentage of companies describing measures against anti-competitive behavior that has a share of 52%. And then when we go deeper and ask for more details, that shrinks. Is the percentage of companies reporting number of legal actions pending, of legal actions or pending actions completed or not having any. So all the possibilities here regarding anti-competitive behavior, and this is only reported by 15% of the companies. Use case in this would be EDF, a French energy company, and they also report on this in different parts of their report. So you can take a look at page 201, page 253, and page 601. And you see that they report very detailed on a compliance program based on a commitment they make. They say we prevent anti-competitive practices. That's a key concern. And then they report on measures, how they implement this commitment in their company, such as with training on competition legislation or through a whistleblowing system. And then these key measures are also explained in key figures. So what did they reach? And there they talk about, for example, 564 training participants in 2023 they had on this kind of trainings. And again, in addition to this, on page 601, they talk about fines or injunctions in connection with anti-competitive behavior, which were recorded in the reporting or which were underlying the company's accountability. Next topic, pretty new, but pretty good in the reporting. It's the management of supplier relations. So this is more detailed described in ESRS G 1.12. And it says that a company must provide information on the management of its relationships with suppliers and their impact on the supply chain. And this is all about how the company manages its purchasing, for example, fair dealings with suppliers or fair payment terms. In this context, they also have to show if there are any social or ecological purchasing conditions. We talked about this in one of the earlier webinars, and it's also about a supplier code of conduct, for example, or about trainings, for example, trainings for the purchasing department, to make sure that this topic is well anchored in the company. When it comes to the percentage of company disclosing policies regarding relationship with suppliers, you can see that we have a quite high number here. 83% of the companies include this information in their reports. 35% also talk about strategies. 48% combine strategies with risks they describe in more detail. And 17% of the companies do not disclose anything here. The next aspect is the payment practices. You see, this is not as common in the reporting of the companies we took a look at. The average score reaches only 16% of all possible points. And when we look at the details, the average invoice payment duration disclosed, this is only reported by 17% of the companies, and 11% includes specific payment policy policies they describe. The majority, 77%, do not say anything about this in more detail. With that, I come to my conclusion. And as a conclusion, I want to show you the ESRS compliance scores for business conduct, which we have measured. So only this score only represents which comes from ESRS, not which comes from GRI, what I have showed you earlier on. And the average score here across our sample is 48%, with the best in class reaching 86% and the last in class 6%. We also displayed the average across different industries, showing you automotive reaching 57%, being over average, as well as chemicals, energy, and engineering. Under average is banks, pharmaceuticals, and insurance. So that might be the case due to the different topics we have measured, but we thought that could be an interesting conclusion to show you, since we talked so much in this webinar about today. And with that, I'm finished and open for more questions if we have any, Claudius.
For a moment.
Sorry, I forgot the top scorer. Oh.
Go ahead.
Ta-da! Top scorer in this business conduct section in 2024 is EDF. So that would be another best practice example to take a look at if you want to learn more. Now I'm open for questions, Claudius.
At the moment, we don't have any more questions, open questions. But of course, if you have any follow-up questions afterwards, please feel free to contact us and we will get back to you. And one last general comment, of course, and as always, we're gonna make the webinar and the slides available on our website. Yes. So from my side, thank you for your participation.
And check out our other webinars. The next one is coming really soon. That has a more capital market approach. We will continue with our sustainability approach then with our sector webinars where we display the different results for, let's say, automotive or engineering, pretty much the sectors I just showed you when I showed you the ESRS compliance scores. So we look forward to see you again, and so far, bye-bye.